It's the time of the season.
Hello, this is Jen, and you're listening to Dreaming Out Loud, a monthly audio chat where we talk about dreams, memory, time, and other intersecting topics. I am recording this for you on April 17th, 2026. And if this is your first time listening, welcome. These audio chats are unscripted and unedited. And this week, marks 5 years that I've been meeting up with some of you, all of you, here on Patreon, and almost 5 years of audio chats. I think come summer, it'll be 5 years of audio chats, which feels a little crazy to me, and yet not. And these are just meant to be, a conversation between me from my when and where, and you and whatever, where, or whenever, when you are listening. And I would say sometimes the audio chats are even more unscripted than others, because the topic or topics that I want to talk about really defy language, or at least my capacity for organizing language or organizing ideas in advance. And as time has passed over these last 5 years, I would say in general, they really have ended up being much more like, I don't want to say channeled, because that's not what they are, but I will use channeled in a verb. They're channeled from somewhere deeper in me that's less organized by language, and more influenced by feeling and image and whatever it is we are before we're verbal. And that means sometimes they're a little messy or chaotic. And maybe this one will be even messier or more chaotic than normal. We'll see. So I opened up the audio chat with the song Time of the Season by the Zombies. It's an alternate take. I really like alternate takes. I really like covers and alternate takes, because my brain likes hearing the sort of familiar song, but with something a little bit new or a little bit different, right? It's like somewhere in between the desire for familiarity and novelty. It's like in the middle. And I chose this song, as I often do with the intro songs to these audio chats, to sort of just to set the atmosphere for what I want to talk about today, which is the fact that this time of year is the time of the season for me. And if you've been listening for a long time, you know that April and May in particular for me have been ripe for synchronicities, for from expanded awareness, for unexpected magic appearing in both my waking life and dreams. And only in retrospect can I see that that's been the case for me for a very long time. I can track as far back as my early 20s, maybe my teens. I'll say my teens, maybe as far back as 15. But only, I think, with the wisdom that comes from age, right? And so we can see, we have experience of passing year after year, season after season, cycle after cycle. And if we're attentive and we're intentional, and especially if we're really good at pattern recognition, and if we're a little bit obsessive with journaling, or at least tracking the years, the months and days of our lives in some formal way, whether that's through emails or photographs, or what we used to use a lot in the 90s and early 2000s, daily planners. If we have some sort of evidence, we can look back and notice that there are certain times of the year that are for birth, that are for death, that are for ideas percolating, that are for development of those ideas, that are for expression of those ideas, that are for beginnings, that are for endings, that are for contraction, that are for expansion. It's really rather remarkable how it's all there, right? In a sort of very general but also specific way, right? So you might know that for yourself, spring is a time for leaving jobs and starting new ones, right? That you've seen that. But it's not necessarily predictable that every year that it's going to go like that, right? Unless you're leaving jobs every year, which I would imagine most of you aren't. But it may be that there is something of that leaving a job energy that shows up that time of year in a very, very small way. Maybe it's leaving a group that you're a part of, or choosing to give up one hobby and start a new one. But if you give attention and intention to time, your own cycles, and that of the collective, it's really remarkable when you get to age 40, 50, 60, and you see patterns repeat. But ultimately, I would say, especially if you're, I think, somebody who's interested in the spiritual path, which I would imagine you are if you're here in this conversation with me, that ultimately I hope each cycle is an octave up. It's provided you with some improvement in some way. So it was only about 10 years ago that I became aware of the fact that this time of year, as ripe as it is for me for synchronicities and magic and growth and serendipitous events, it's the time of year in Judaism, for that as well. That the period from Passover, which typically falls sometime, usually in April, and the holiday of Shavuot, which usually falls sometime in end of May, early June, that there's a tradition, and there are rituals, and there are practices in Judaism that are meant to support the very journey that I find myself on pretty much every April. And it was remarkable to me that I've been somehow tuned into that all along without consciously knowing it. So that's number one. And then number two, it's been such a gift to me and so supportive to me over the last 10 years as I grow in my own, let's say, learning and study and practice of Jewish mysticism, as I return again to my love of prayer and connection inside community and song and stories that I loved so much as a young child going to Hebrew school, but sort of lost my taste for across many years. It's been so lovely to just sort of discover that I can be on this sort of path during this time of year, which isn't always easy, mind you. Like I'm talking about synchronicities and magic and opening up, but there's often a lot of struggle and challenges along the way. And depending on the year, the specifics were much harder than other years, but that I'm not alone on this path. Like it's really comforting to me, because as I've talked about before here in the audio chat, this work can be really lonely and sometimes frightening, because many of us are meeting versions of reality that are very different than what we were raised to believe reality is. And we're having strange, anomalous, unexplainable experiences that even if there was some book or manual for them, they aren't necessarily the exact replica of whatever it is that we're experiencing personally. For some of us, those strange synchronicities involve dreams. And for some of us, those strange magical experiences involve seeing orbs in the sky. For some of us, it's seeing strange orbs in the sky in our dreams. For some of us, it's number synchronicities or repeating patterns. And ultimately, unless or until you have a shared anomalous experience with somebody, which can be really transformative, to have a witness to something magical with you. Unless that you're having that or have had that, it can be very lonely and sometimes scary, sometimes unsettling. And to have, for me, to have both a community where I can bring my, at least my unsettled self and feel held, that at least there are others who have had some taste of what I'm going through, even if it's the taste is not the same exact taste as mine, a different flavor, is comforting to me. And in the years since I've been engaged in what's known as the Counting of the Omer, which is a daily practice that either observant Jews or anybody out there who wishes, you count the days between the second night of Passover and this holiday of Shavuot. And I'll tell you more about that in a second. But since I've had both formal practices and rituals of my own, rituals that I've created for myself that resonate more specifically with me to engage in from Passover to Shavuot. The whole experience for me feels a lot more grounding. And so I get to sort of journey up the mountain, walk the path of ascent, but at the same time feel held by community, by rituals that are shared by others, and rituals that I've created for myself, but that in a way are shared with myself across time, right? So if I get to, meet myself on the path year after year too, it feels, it helps me feel a lot more held. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'd be curious to hear from any of you listening. I would imagine that Judaism is not the only religion and not the only culture to have practices, have rituals specifically this time of year. I would imagine that there are pagan communities and just, other religions. I mean, there's a reason why Passover and Easter are around the same time of year, and that they fall near the spring equinox. So I would be curious to hear from you what this time of year, April, May, June, tends to be about for you. If you are someone who experiences outside of typical perception, if that's something that happens to you more this time of year, or if there's another time of year where that occurs for you, I would be really curious to hear about that. And I'd also be curious to know from you what practices, if any, you take on when reality, time, dreams start to get funky. For me, it's an ebb and flow. I'm grateful that as funky as dreams and time and reality seem for me in general, and increasingly so, I would say over the last 10 to 15 years, it's not like that all the time for me. So the kind of energetic infusion, or what some would call downloads, which I have some ambivalence around that term, or transmissions, that does seem to happen between Passover to Shavuot for me. And I'm grateful that it's not like that all year round. As much as I love that time, I love it. I do. But I know for myself that I would not be able to continue living a sane, at least somewhat sane, productive life, which I also love, with my family and my friends and my community and my dreamwork clients, if I was in that state all the time. And what I also really appreciate about Judaism and Jewish mysticism in particular is that that's talked about a lot. That there isn't some goal for like enlightenment necessarily in Jewish mysticism. You are meant to be living in 3D reality while also sort of striving for a closeness and a connection all the time for the divine. There is this understanding that you are not God, and yet you are created in God's image. And so there is divine light in you, that there is God in everyone and everything. But at the same time, where the real magic happens, I hate to break it to you and to myself, because I feel like every time I say this, I'm breaking it to myself, is in the daily. It's in the daily. It's in relationships with people. It's in encounters with the cashier at the bank. It's in traffic. All of that, as much as it is on the mountain, as much as it is in the receipt of transmission, as much as it is in the holy and in prayer, it's in life. So I guess, when I'm being my best self, it's a relief for me to remember when I'm going through the tough stuff, let's say in February or March, which is when the tough stuff often happens, sometimes in November, December too, that there's a return, God willing, in April and May, in June, into the receiving, the phase of receiving, the phase of being able to open my heart and make contact with my own divine light, and hopefully to be able to perceive that light in others around me and feel connection to them, and that's mutual, that they feel connected to me and my light. I don't think it would work if it was all love and light, all downloads all the time. And it wouldn't work if it was all the mundane or the profane, or paying bills or recycling coupons that came in the mail. This year in particular, though, and this is mostly, I think, what drove me to bring this topic to you today. This year, this time of year feels really, really intense. And just from brief conversations I've had with other people in my life, or some of the people that I get to have conversations with online but don't know in life, is that I'm not alone in that. And I'm not talking about what's happening so much in the world, like the world of the news, the world of politics, the world of the weather, the world of, I don't know, the stuff that we used to talk about around the water cooler back in the 90s. Although I want to acknowledge and recognize that too, of course, But I'm sensing something really, potentially transformative happening. And I'm not looking to be exaggerative or scary. I don't know what's coming. I just want to be perfectly clear about that. I don't know what's coming, and yet I feel a quickening. And it's been building for some time, and my my son said to me the other day, I was telling him about the astrology of April, and he said, Mom, you've been talking about the astrology for months now. When's the astrology going to be done? But for those of you who are interested in astrology, you probably know that astrologers have been talking about anyway the astrology of April 2026 for a long time. And for me, it's been like a steady building, maybe from 1999, even 2012, 2020. And it just feels like that's something's coming to some kind of fruition right now, and that there's going to be some shift in the way we perceive time, space, and each other in waking life. That's all I can really say right now with any level of certainty, which is still uncertain. That for me, intuitively, what feels like is about to happen is some kind of shift in perception around time mainly, space, and connection to others. How we either communicate with each other, how we perceive each other. And for me, personally, I am so grateful for my dreams these last 10 to 15 years since 2012, because more and more I see my dreams and my dream work and this work and these conversations that I have with you as spiritual training ground for me, so that whatever shift happens doesn't feel shocking, doesn't feel too startling to my system. And yet I also have some belief that it will be shocking nonetheless. But I feel like my dreams and my dream work have been a schooling of sorts to prepare my system for change. And again, I want to be really clear. I don't see myself as a channel. I don't see this as like any kind of prophecy. I'm not looking to scare anyone. If anything, I think it's just something that may end up being more like an evolutionary shift than anything else. And at least from where I am, is as dark as the news and the world can have us, as dark as things can seem sometimes, both in our very close personal lives. And again, I want to acknowledge that. And in the world, I also am very tuned into what feels like light. Like that there's something bright and benevolent and hopeful and optimistic in whatever is this perceptual shift that's coming. And it felt really important for me to come on and to share with you that I really believe in deeply, that in the light of this, and as cheesy as it sounds, in your light and my own light, and our inherent ability to access that light, I think starting perhaps with contemplative practices like dreamwork, like prayer, and I guess I also just wanted to offer myself as a resource to you if things have been funky with your time and with your sense of reality, if there's a way, just through my own knowledge, skills, experience, that I can be supportive to you, I'd like to try to do that. I'm limited, of course. I have my own strengths and my own capacities, but I also have my own limitations in terms of like time and energy and experience. But I guess I just want to let you know that you're not alone if you're someone who feels that way sometimes with the strange things that are happening for you in your life. And with that, I think I will sign off. And thank you again for being here for this conversation. And yeah, just holding you and myself and all of us in loving light through whatever it is that's shifting. Sending you love across time and space. Till next time.